What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I am your host, EJ Holland. Alongside me is my co-host, Zach Libby. So we are on a bit of a different schedule. I know this isn't the usual live show. I know that we're not having a Q&A show this week, so apologies. I'm traveling. As you can see, I am in a rental car right now, sitting outside of a Panera in Florida. And Zach is all the way in Delaware for a family reunion. But we did want to make sure to recap the big event, the barbecue at the big house. So we'll talk about everything Michigan recruiting related coming out of the event. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you guys to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos, and also make sure to subscribe to the Wolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com, exclusively for our YouTube members. All right, guys. So let's talk barbecue at the big house. Zach, first things first, the food looked a lot better. Were you pleased with Michigan's spread this year after they were roasted last year for their viral great value chicken tenders and boiled hot dogs?
I think the perfect tweet came out Saturday with nutritionist Abigail O'Connor with the quote, "Roast me now," and the giant pig, right? Just fresh off the grill, fresh off the smoker or whatever. But, even one of Michigan's 25 commits, Kyle Winston, gave it a 10 out of 10. And I think I can speak for you as well. All the people I've been talking to have said nothing but great things about the food. So we don't have to talk about that criticism this year, unlike last year.
Well, I talked to Andrew Marsh and his mother about the visit, and obviously we're all from Texas. I'm from Texas, they're from Texas, and it's not going to be Texas barbecue, obviously. I mean, I lived in Chicago for multiple years and was never able to find a good barbecue spot, really. And they do it weird. It's like oven, or I don't really know. Like, they don't have smoked meats. But anyway, point being that, the expectation isn't to have Texas barbecue or Carolina barbecue or, anything from the South, but you ideally want a better spread, just to impress recruits. It's attention to detail, right? And that's something that Sherrone Moore has really, really brought more of. I can't talk enough about how many parents and recruits this offseason have mentioned details. Everything from the players lining up their cleats and helmets to a certain order, to the way they stack the weights in the weight room, to the way they operate. Everything is very detail oriented. And you saw Sherrone Moore take pride in those details on the recruiting trail by expanding the recruiting department this year, by finding assistants that may not have had that power or floor experience in the past, but guys that wanted to recruit. And I know it may seem insignificant, like, no recruit is choosing a school or not choosing a school because they have crappy chicken tenders during the barbecue. But I still think it's important to, especially in the age of social media where things like that can go viral, to pay attention to detail. And I think, the criticism was probably warranted and from last year's bad looking picture. But I do think that Michigan turned it around. They made light of it. You said Abigail O'Connor did the roast me now tweet, and they put out a really good spread. Again, we're not expecting Texas barbecue here, but I do think they put out a really good spread. The recruits really liked it. They enjoyed the pig. Some of them didn't want to venture into trying the actual pig. Eli Owen said, he's from the Smoky Mountains. He was out there ready to rip the pig apart, and they did not let him. But they really enjoyed, just the showcase of the food and the actual food itself. So going back to the Marshes, I talked to them about it, and Eleanor, Andrew's mom, told me, well, last year they did have some barbecue. It was more than just the chicken tenders and the hot dogs. So they did have actual barbecue last year that wasn't in the photo. But she did tell me that the food was significantly better. The actual barbecue that they had was significantly better. I don't know where they brought it in from or whatever. The presentation was better. So, again, it might not have been as bad as the photo made it seem last year, but I think they took a negative, made it a positive, made light of it, and the recruits and the families and the staff seem to really enjoy, the food and the presentation and, again, the details that come with it. But that's enough food talk. Well, I guess, Zach, would you eat that pig? Would you have ripped it up like Eli Owens?
I've had pig. I've had pig 3 times where it's cooked underground, like in the dirt. But yeah, I'll tear that apart easily.
Yeah, well, I forgot Zach is a psychopath and said he wants to fly in a helicopter and shoot down innocent piglets roaming around in the
feral pigs.
That he said that's one of his life's dream, which he's a sicko for wanting to do that, killing. What about Piglet, man? Breaks my heart here. Anyway, or Gordy. Nobody ever watched this movie. All right, let's. Or Babe. Zach's
you're favorite. Old. If you're name dropping Babe the movie, you are old.
Babe the movie. All right, let's get into actual Michigan recruiting. So obviously a loaded visitors list coming in for the barbecue at the Big House. Let's start off with the wide receiver group. I thought was really interesting. Had some really good names on it. I'll throw it to you, Zach, for Jerome Miles, who has blown up on the recruiting trail, top 100 wide receiver out of Utah, recently decommitted from Ole Miss, made his first visit to Michigan. Zach, how are you feeling about Michigan's chances with Miles coming out of the weekend?
I think that when the Wolverine talked to Jerome Miles' wide receiver coach at Corner Canyon, which was published right before the barbecue. You can go check that out. But I think the consensus heading into the visit was that this was an exciting trip, flying cross country to Ann Arbor, go see the national champs for the first time, go see the coaches for the first time in person, like Ron Bellamy, wide receivers coach, Sherrone Moore, head coach, go reunite with offensive coordinator Kirk Campbell again after he evaluated Miles during the spring evaluation period. I think, moving forward into this cycle, I think the plan or the likelihood of Miles ending up taking an official visit to Michigan, I think confidence is high for that to happen, especially knowing that he's already gotten a taste, like a really good in-depth taste of what Ann Arbor is like on and off the field. Especially, knowing that he was able to get those individual meetings with coaches inside Schembechler Hall. But, I think you and I have both said this on this podcast. This is a freak athlete. This is a vertical outside deep weapon. He makes plays in the open field. He can create separation. He has good length. Runs a 4.3 640 at 6'3", 215 pounds. Broke a state record that was held for 43 years in the 100-meter dash, and he broke that earlier this spring. So this is a guy with the athleticism that can be a difference maker for Michigan. I know Michigan's going to continue pushing until the very end. The only thing that's the only thing I'm really looking out for is that how many schools have entered the mix this recently. He has offers from USC, LSU, Penn State, Ohio State. That's come over the last 2 weeks. So a lot of schools are really entering the mix right now. So it's all about Michigan continuing its push and making sure that official visit happens.
A couple other names, obviously one being Andrew Marsh. I talked about, getting on the phone with both Andrew and his mother, and they made it pretty clear. I think there's been some debate on whether Andrew's going to take his decision into November, which was originally his plan, or move it up to August. They made it pretty clear to me that they are heavily leaning towards an August decision, with the specific date being August 20th to honor the birthday of Andrew's late father. So it's a special day for him, and that's something they would like to do. So I do think a decision's going to come on August 20. Now, could he wait until November? Possibly, but I think right now there's a really, really good chance he does decide in August, which obviously bodes well for Michigan. I have a prediction in for the Wolverines. I've had one since he made his official visit last month, and I feel really good about the pick. I don't think that Kentucky is going to be able to win him over as much as they've been, a thorn for Michigan this recruiting cycle and in previous cycles. So Washington was considered a player there, but they've kind of tapered off. And Oklahoma was once considered the favorite, but they've moved into they got some commitments from some other wide receivers. So I think all signs point to Michigan. It was another great visit. This was his third visit in 2 months. Remember, he visited twice in June, once unofficially, came back for Victor's weekend, now made it back for the barbecue at the Big House. I mean, Marsh has been to Michigan more than some of the targets in the Midwest, to be honest. He visited quite a bit. I mentioned he was at the barbecue last year. I mean, he was there a couple of times last year. So I think that, Michigan fits what he wants. I think he has a great relationship with Ron Bellamy. He sees himself as a potential difference maker, an early contributor in this offense. So, again, feeling very confident about my prediction for Andrew Marsh. Now, Michigan already has a commitment from Philip Wright, 3-star wide receiver out of Louisiana. He did make a visit to LSU on Friday and then made it to the barbecue at the Big House at Michigan on Saturday and Sunday. So can Michigan keep Philip Wright? That's a good question. I think the fact that Michigan got him on campus after the LSU visit is great. I think the fact that Michigan made him a top priority while LSU was looking at some out-of-state targets, that definitely helps. I think the pathway to early playing time is something that also helps and is very appealing to Wright. So I think Michigan has a legitimate chance to keep him. But, if I covered LSU, I would also be feeling good about a flip. Destrehan has historically been very LSU friendly. When I covered Texas, the Longhorns tried to pull a few recruits from Destrehan, and I think they were only successful one time for a kid that LSU didn't really push for. So I'm very familiar with Destrehan and the ties LSU has there. It's kind of like, a USC modern day type of situation where there are some anomalies, but you mostly expect them to end up at USC. Kind of the same thing here. LSU recruits in-state extremely well. They really impressed Wright on the visit. They offered him a track scholarship as well, which hasn't really been a factor until now, coincidentally, I suppose. But, if track is a factor, then LSU has a much bigger advantage in that department than does Michigan. Obviously, Destrehan's very close to home for Wright. He has a couple of teammates, or he has a teammate committed there, a couple of teammates that are already on the roster. Again, just makes a lot of sense for him to flip there. But I think Michigan's going to give it all it has to keep him. And I still think there's a chance he does, end up in the class, but very, very worried about LSU coming away with a flip. It might not be tomorrow, but it's something we're going to have to watch until the end of the recruiting cycle when Wright makes, his final decision and signs in December. Let's go ahead and talk about the offensive line group. Gregory Patrick, a big in-state prospect, was on campus. He's a Michigan State legacy, but that hasn't seemed to really bother Michigan as of late. They've landed Caden Strayhorn and Avery Gatch this cycle, looking to do the same with Sparty legacy Gregory Patrick next cycle. Zach, I know you caught up with Patrick right after the visit. How are you feeling about Michigan's chances to win over the Michigan State legacy?
I think you should feel good, just especially knowing how much work has been done by Sherrone and offensive line coach Grant Newsome. That's started back in January of this year. Like throughout this offseason, it's been a top priority for Michigan to land Gregory Patrick. I mean, the talent is there, number 74 overall, number 1 in Michigan. By on 3. I mean, such a massive frame, around 6'4", 6'5", and close to 300 pounds. But he is, I think the personalities of Newsome and Moore really mesh well with Patrick. I think that's something that's really been a big takeaway whenever I speak to him and his family. I think the family's impressions on how Newsome and Moore, you know, with their offensive line background as players and coaches. I mean, their potential of developing Patrick into an All-American, right, a future NFL player on an offensive line that's won 2 Jerome Awards in the last 3 years. I think that's all very appealing, but I think everything with education, proximity, just a culture that Moore has really instilled with the football program, I think that all speaks wonders for the family. And I think, you know, this last visit was interesting too, because Patrick's head coach at Portage Northern was on the visit as well, and that was his first time really getting an in-depth look, and I know he was impressed with what he saw over the weekend. So overall, I mean, Michigan is in its top 9. The Wolverines are with, you know, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Notre Dame, Nebraska. I think the big storyline is obviously Patrick's ties to Michigan State, and he's been to East Lansing the most out of any school. I think that's going to be the number one competition right now, and I think I've said this on the board up on the fort quite a few times, but I think if Michigan lands Gregory Patrick, I think it can't be overstated how monumental of a win that would be, considering how deeply connected this prospect is with the Spartans, and how, you know, the new coaching staff there has really been involved in this recruitment over, you know, at Michigan State. That new coaching staff has been involved in just as well. So I think this could come down to an in-state battle. But again, Notre Dame is in this really well. He has legacy ties to Nebraska. He's been to Oklahoma. He has interest in like Alabama. So overall, I think this is a recruitment that we're going to take into the offseason, this upcoming offseason, you know, taking official visits and all that good stuff. So overall, I think it's just continuing what's been done already. So 5 visits already. He could potentially end up at the Big House this fall for the Texas game, and I'm sure a lot of barbecue visitors are going to be there in early September. So overall, I think this barbecue did nothing but great things for Michigan's chances.
Yeah, just a couple other offensive line notes. I think Michigan made strong moves with guys like top 100 prospect Tyler Merrill, on 300 prospect Zayden Krempin, on 300 prospect Marky Walbridge. So a lot of offensive line talent coming in this weekend, and I think that helped move the needle for the running backs. You know, Savon Haider was arguably one of the most important targets on campus this weekend. And I think Michigan and Georgia are the 2 schools to beat here, even though the RPM says Virginia. I don't think the Cavs will be winning this recruitment. But I do think Michigan and Georgia are right up there. And, you know, the bond that the family really has with Tony Alfred, who's been recruiting Haider for years now, I think that really helps. You know, it was an entire family affair for Haider. Both his parents were on the visit this time. When they visited in the spring, it was just him and his dad. So on this visit, his mother got a chance to get a look at the program. His mentor, Adam McCann, also got a chance to look at the program. And I think they were just blown away by what Michigan has to offer on and off the field. Obviously, it's a very running back friendly system. And again, the Alfred relationship really helps. And I think one key note here that I mentioned on the Wolverine is the fact that they praised the NIL presentation, and Sean McGee, Michigan's new general manager, was already involved in this, in his visit, and is already involved in this recruitment. And I think that bodes well for Michigan, which is taking steps in the right direction when it comes to recruiting and NIL. So again, I think Michigan is very, very high up there for Savon Haider. And I think they made a decent move with Javian Osborne as well, on 3's number 1 running back out of Texas. He's another one to keep an eye on. I think Alfred's done a great job of putting Michigan in really good spots with Savon Haider, Javian Osborne. I know the RPM says the heavy lead is for Texas, which is no surprise. He's a Texas kid. But again, I think Michigan really made a strong move here, and is an appealing program for him. I think they've made a really strong move for Javian Mallory out of Florida, who was just on campus last month. So, 3 premier running backs that are very, very high on Michigan. And look, I mean, I always mentioned it when Mike Hart was the assistant here, and not to rag on Mike Hart because I'm sure people will rag on me for being mean, but this is these are the types of backs that we expected Michigan to get on a regular basis. And I know that Alfred hasn't landed these guys yet, but just the fact that he's built multiple year relationships with these kids, that he's getting them on campus on multiple occasions. I mean, there's just such a night and day effort going from Mike Hart to Tony Alfred. He's been a great addition on the recruiting trail. And, he landed 2 on 300 backs already in the 2025 cycle, and Jasper Parker and Donovan Johnson. I think in his first full cycle with 2026, he has a chance to do even better, potentially landing one of Haider and Osborne and maybe Mallory. I mean, it's a dream class right there. Before we give you some quick hitters on the defensive side of the ball, we do have a message from our sponsor, My Perfect Franchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands, or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Ludicky can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? You can find Andy over at myperfectfranchise.net. You can email him and you can call him at 404-973-9901. He's available for a Zoom call as well. So make sure you get with Andy Ludicky if you're interested in the franchise game. And look, franchises are huge. They're all around me as I sit in this parking lot right now. I'm in the Panera parking lot, and directly across from me is a McDonald's. Then there's a Shoe Carnival, an Ulta, a Home Goods, even though that's probably not a smart investment. I think they were bought by TJ Maxx. Anyway, Petco is here, and everybody knows I need food for my cat, so we need more Petcos around. And Moe's Southwest Grill, Dollar Tree, you name it, franchises are everywhere. So now is the time to take advantage. And maybe you can bring a Publix to the Midwest. There's a Publix over here. So, yeah, Andy Ludicky's your guy. All right, let's get into the defensive side of the ball. Michigan landed a surprise commitment from on 300 2026 cornerback Brody Jennings out of Jacksonville. So that Florida momentum continues. They landed Brady Hart, which, by the way, we haven't even talked about Brady Hart, but he was extremely active recruiting some of the guys we mentioned: Savon Haider, Andrew Marsh, Tyler Merrill, Brody Jennings. So Brady Hart played a huge role throughout the entire weekend. And Brody Jennings, another really, really solid land out of the state of Florida. Now Michigan has prospects already committed that are highly ranked at 2 premium positions. You have your quarterback leading the class, and you have your fixture at the cornerback position in Brody Jennings. And so this was a really interesting one. Jennings wasn't even on the original visitors list, got up to campus. He was reoffered by Lamar Morgan last month. So this one really progressed quickly. Michigan fans might remember his older brother, Brandon Jennings, who I covered early on in my time on this beat. He committed to Michigan and then ended up flipping to Maryland. I believe he's at Mississippi State right now, but it looks like the younger Jennings really wants to be at Michigan. So looking forward to catching up with him and getting more on why he made this decision. But Zach, you've actually had a look at Brody Jennings. You went to the Under Armour camp in Orlando last year when you were seeing eventual Michigan commit Jake Winera, and you had a chance to get a glimpse of Brody Jennings. So what was your kind of takeaway just from seeing him live?
I mean, this was a kid that I believe got offered from the first time he got offered was from Hilo, right? George Hilo, the linebackers coach. So that happened like a month or two after that Under Armour camp. So that offer was still relatively new. But when talking to him, I mean, I was kind of impressed with his, his vertical length, right? Like, he was pretty tall. I mean, I'm 5'10", and I was pretty impressed with just the size. I mean, he's someone that can still fill out, but that was over 18 months ago. So I'm sure when you go see him, it's going to be a different story. But overall, I mean, that was a really impressive group during the Under Armour camp, like down Orlando. I mean, that was any Florida prospect you can think of was there. And as a freshman, I mean, I believe he held his own in the few reps that I took a look at him. But overall, I mean, I think when he told me about just early interests of Michigan's defensive backs, I mean, Will Johnson moves the needle for any defensive back at the high school level. So I think it's big that he went up there last weekend and found his home immediately, right from the get-go, as soon as he stepped foot on campus.
So Michigan also had a big 25 target on campus on the defensive side of the ball in Jaden Sanders, on 300 cornerback out of Texas, now set to make his decision on August 10th. Michigan has the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. I thought they did extremely well on his return visit. Remember, he also visited in June. Oklahoma State remains the biggest threat to Michigan, and honestly, the only way Michigan loses this recruitment is if Jaden Sanders gets cold feet and wants to stay closer to home. Michigan's obviously the superior program. Again, they knocked it out of the park this weekend. Michigan checks more boxes for him than does Oklahoma State. So this is Michigan's recruitment to lose. Again, I don't see it happening. I think Michigan will win out, but the only real concern here is Oklahoma State being closer to home. He is a small town kid in Texas, so as the decision nears, does that play a role? We'll see. But I do think Lamar Morgan and J.B. Brown, Michigan's new special teams coordinator, who is a Texas native, did a fantastic job of identifying Sanders when he wasn't even ranked, making him a priority, getting him to campus twice. There's nothing else Michigan can really do in this recruitment. I think they've done everything possible to win it. It's just a matter of, does he want to stay closer to home, or is he comfortable with leaving? And I think Michigan answered a lot of questions in a positive manner this weekend towards accomplishing that goal of making him feel more comfortable further away from home. So since this show isn't live, we don't have an OT question of the day. But Zach, I will ask you, out of all the franchises that I named, which franchise would you want in your life?
Dollar Tree.
Why?
Of all the dollar stores, I love Dollar Tree the most.
Well, I would go with Petco because I love cats and other animals, while Zach likes to kill pigs.
Feral pigs. There's a big difference. Like they want them. I don't know. Spend this whole podcast talking about why it's good for the environment.
But I would actually go a different route than Petco. And I'm going to go with Ulta because my wife buys like this $200 shampoo and she makes me buy it for every so often. And I'm like, why is this shampoo $200? It's like Pureology or something. So I would just own the Ulta franchise to give myself unlimited supplies of shampoo and conditioner to give to my wife, so she does not make me spend that amount of money. Which you can do that if you own a franchise with Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Who doesn't want a McDonald's? Right now, the line is crazy here in Florida. There's even a homeless person outside of a car in the line at McDonald's right now. Everybody is flocking to franchises, so head over to myperfectfranchise.net for your latest franchise ventures. Subscribe to the Wolverine today at thewolverine.com using the promo code UM1 for $1 for 2 months. If you haven't been able to tell, I've only slept like 3 hours. So it's been quite a day, and you can find all my coverage from my swing through Florida right now over at thewolverine.com. And also like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free.